In this part, we are going to discuss the threats to accurate evaluation to the training effectiveness. Indeed, most of organizations don't care to evaluate training. They provide the training to the employees, but they never do the evaluation on the training effectiveness. Perhaps they may just consider that training is a kind of the PR approach. And so it is a kind of the promotion to the organization image instead of really increasing the capability of the employees. Even though they are having evaluation on the training section, only 1/3 of the UK company will seek to evaluate training, but they're still not doing very well. And many organizations do not bother understand what they are training to the employees. And especially, there is a lack of understanding of the specific scientific principle of training. They are not using a more scientific way to do the evaluation on the training effectiveness. And so, even though they spend a lot of money on training, and they find that actually the effectiveness is vary because for most of the time they don't really care about the training effectiveness. Training evaluation, indeed, is a complex, difficult, and often depends on the long-term perspective for which many managers do not have the patience. Training effectiveness may not be so real-time. It means that it may take some time to take effective. Today, you train your employee. It doesn't mean that their improvement already or immediately exists. It may take some time. So it is a kind of the long-term process, a long-term perspective to see the effectiveness of the training. But in most of the time, managers, they do not have this patience. They will evaluate the training effectiveness immediately. In such a case, we may not see any big difference in the behavior as well as the performance of the employees. Indeed, in order to have a more meaningful and useful data, and what we are suggesting that the employers or the organization can follow the model, the level 1 to 4, and to collect the data to give them the ideas about the effectiveness of the training courses. The next part is about training transfer. Even though we deliver the courses to the employees, but it doesn't mean that the training can be successfully transferred to the employees. And so, in order to understand the effectiveness of training, we also need to consider about training transfer. By definition, training transfer refers to the use of the trained knowledge on the job. Even though the employees, they absorb the training contents, they learn something, but it doesn't mean that they can make good use of the trained skills and knowledge. So that's why training transfer is one of also very important aspect that we have to encounter. Learned behavior must be generalized to the job context and maintained over a period of time on the job, and we call it as learning transfer. Learning transfer is very important outcome of learning and training. What is the point of being able to do something only in the training section? If you only learn something in the training section, but you can never use it, and so will the training become very useless. That's why training transfer is very important outcome, the effectiveness of the training, and is often not as strong as desired. Although the organization spend a lot of money and they hope to have to make good use of the knowledge has already been learned from training, but in most of the time, indeed, the training transfer is not as strong as we desired. In order to motivate employees to make use of the training knowledge, employees need to be encouraged by peers. Peers' influence is particularly effective than leader influence. As long as if the employees, they can see how others do, they will follow, they will encourage, they will motivate, it's more effective than you are told, you tell the employees what to do. Indeed, we also need to make sure that employees must feel confidence in the new skills. Even though we deliver the training, giving them the training to them, but it doesn't mean that they have a high level of confidence in making use of these new skills. So we also need to increase the confidence in doing that. In that organization, we also need to have some support on training. It doesn't mean that after you're providing them the training section, the courses, and then that's it. No, it is not the case. Organizations usually, they also need to provide some support on doing the training after the training as well. Say, for example, like if you teach the employees, if you provide training to the employees on how to use the new system, the new software, after the training, organizations still need to set up a team, the advisor or hotline team to the employees. Whenever they use the new system, if they face some difficulty, they can still seek for some advisors and support from the organization. So organization, they also need to support training as well. Many individual and organization factors indeed will also affecting training transfer effectiveness. Some of the example like the individual characteristic, some of the employees, they have no passionate to their work, to their job. And even though you train them, give them the knowledge to do their job, but it doesn't mean that they are motivated. Organization's factors is the same. If the organizational structure is very, very tall, and so it means that the employees, they don't have the freedoms to design their work, they cannot control over the resources and their work. In such working environment, employees indeed, they cannot make good use of the training knowledge because they are just told what they have to do. That's why individual and organization factors will also affecting the training transfer effectiveness. In the following, we will have a more discussion on the individual factors in affecting the training transfer. For example, like more intelligent people, they are more likely to train better. Is it true? According to some of the research, the answer is probably yes, especially if we look into the cognitive ability. Cognitive ability indeed is the strongest predictor of training transfer. If someone will have a higher abilities and then for cognitive ability, probably they will be easier and more successfully in making use of their training skills. Indeed, personality matters too. Say, for example, like the Big Five, the conscientiousness, openness, extroversion were also highly associated with training transfer. We can see that for someone, if they care about the job, if they're highly reliable person, conscientiousness, and then it is more likely that they take into consideration on how to improve their job. So that's why they are more likely to make use of the training knowledge. Openness, more open-minded person, they're more likely to absorb some new knowledge and then they will internalize those new knowledge and skills and make use of these skills. Extroversion, more outgoing, and is more likely to have a better relationship with their boss, with their peers. And so with the peers influence, the boss influence will also encouraging them, motivating them to use their training skills. However, some of the research says that it's not very sure about the effects of neuroticism. It means that if someone, their emotions is not very stable, and so we are not quite sure whether they will use their training skills or not. It's not very, very sure for this. Besides that, we can also see that for someone who is relatively high on self-efficacy. They have the confidence in their job, and is also a notable predictor of successful transfer. It makes sense because if people have a high confidence in yourself, and it will encourage you to use some new knowledge that you have learned. Besides that, motivation is a very, very strong predictor of the transfer as well. As well as said that motivation, sometimes the employees, they got the ability to do well, but it doesn't mean that they will do well because it also depends on whether they have the motivation to do this. And so if the employees, they have a higher motivation, it is very likely that they will transfer and happy to transfer and make good use of their knowledge. Training, indeed, should also be viewed as useful by trainee. If employees feel that the training section is not useful to them, is not meaningful to them, and so they are not willing to use this. That's why training effectiveness, the course and also the content and mode of training is also should be viewed as useful by trainee. Otherwise, they would not use the train the skilled. How about for the organization's factors? Should the organization force or not to force the employees to have the training transfer? Indeed, employees may react more positively when they decide to attend training. It means that if the employees, they have the motivation to attend the training provided to them, and so you don't need to force them, and they will automatically and are more likely to use of their training skills. Of course, leadership and management may also shape the supporting environment of training. Leaders should encourage the employees to use the new skills. Management performance appraisal system will also encourage the employees to use the new skills, will also make a difference in encouraging employees to transfer their training. We always need to remind the employees that they learn something, but they also need to make use of that. Feedback should be given to them to tell them that what they have done well, what they have well to be improved, and encouraging them, and to reward someone that is using the new skills. Last but not the least, let's do a quick recap on that. Training is an increasingly important part of workplace because today's employees, they are the knowledgeable workers. They require to not only having the work improvement, but also would expect to have the personal development. That's why T&D is become one of the important axes, important issues to attract the new talents. Training and development are similar, but indeed they are not the same thing. As I said that, although we are using these two terms interchangeably, but indeed they are not the same. Training, it means trained to give the employees some specific knowledge. However, development is kind of the future-oriented, providing employees a more holistic and general capability improvement. There are many individual, organizational, and societal benefits of the T&D. In this way, we can see that T&D is not only good to the individual and organization, but also have some benefits to the society as well. The training cycle, we also need to use it as an important tool for developing program. We are not only limited to the reaction and to see the immediate reaction of the employees. Instead, we hope that the training is really particularly useful to affecting the organization as well as the society as a whole. Last but not the least, training transfer, although it's difficult to establish and can be affected by individual as well as organizational factor, but we also need to pay attention on what should we do, what should the organization do in order to encourage employees to have the training transfer. Otherwise, even though the organization spend a lot of money, it's very costly to do the T&D for the employees, but if they do not do well in training transfer, it's just a kind of wasting money. So last but not the least, training is important, but training transfer is particularly important as well. Thank you so much for your attention in this class. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm very happy to discuss with you. Thank you and see you again later.